Over the last 2 years, the TSA has identified over $700 million being flown out and linked to Somali travel. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir, I don't have the data on that.
In 2021, you met with a group of Somalis, business people. Those three people were there, who said they were having difficulties because they were being investigated. You may not remember some of the things you said to them. Do we have the video queued up?
Walz agrees with me that this piddly, stupid stuff running small people out of business is terrible.
Yeah, because what you thought was terrible there was that these people were being investigated for fraud. And you later took $10,000 in campaign donations from these same individuals. Do you remember that?
Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm glad you brought it up, because of the 10 partners in that fraud that you mentioned, 9 of them went to prison. Do you know who the one partner was that didn't go? Your buddy, Hunter Biden. That's right. Hunter Biden didn't go. And by the way, you must not have been here. I don't think you were here when I introduced all these documents earlier before I had to leave to go to judiciary, talking about of the 1,500 criminals pardoned by Joe Biden in 1 week, 24 of them were fraudsters that had hundreds of millions of dollars of restitution forgiven by Joe Biden. But now I'm going to go now to Mr. Ellison.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I've had enough of you. Let's talk to Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, isn't it true that when you were a member of Congress, you sponsored the Money Remittances Improvement Act of 2014? It was H.R. 4386. Do you remember that?
Congressman, I think that's accurate.
Yeah, I get you. We all introduced lots of bills, but that bill's purpose was to give more authority to states to investigate remittance payments. Do you remember that?
Congressman, I believe that the purpose of that bill was to facilitate financial transactions for Minnesotans who needed them.
Well, in reality, you shifted remittance payment investigations to the states, and that was supported by the Somali American Remittances Association. You may not remember that, but that was.
Congressman, could you remind me, did that bill ever pass?
H.R. 4386. So it was supported by the Somali American Resistance Association, and it was so important to you that you said, quote, "This is a great day for diaspora communities around the country, including the Somali and Hmong communities." And that's something you said, and we know that the Somali population in Minnesota supported that bill. That bill was passed, I believe, in 2014. Minnesota started identifying large numbers of remittances payments going overseas. And isn't it true that within 4 years of the bill passing, more than $100 million had been flown out of the Minneapolis airport by Somalians? Do you know that?
I don't have the information on that.
And then over the last 2 years, the TSA has identified over $700 million being flown out and linked to Somali travel. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir, I don't have the data on that.
Under your tenure as the AG, the amount of remittance payments going to Somalia, which, by the way, some estimates as high as 40% of all Somalia's GDP comes from those remittance payments, and roughly 40% of families in Somalia receive some benefit, economic benefit directly from some remittance payments. So moving from that, do you know Salim Saeed?
That name is not familiar to me, sir.
Ikran Mohammed?
No.
Abshir Omar?
No.
Okay, so in 2021, you met with a group of Somalis, business people. Those three people were there. Safari Restaurant, Partners in Quality Care, also known as Parties in Nutrition, some of their named partners, and Feeding Our Future representatives, including Abshir Omar, who said they were having difficulties because they were being investigated, and that conduct is very racist, xenophobic, and Islamophobic. Do you remember that meeting?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you that these are people who were fraudsters. They lied to me. They lied to the judge. Yep. They lied to state agencies. And that's why we contributed to them being convicted.
Well, let's go on from that, because you may not remember some of the things you said to them. Specifically, And maybe we should play this video. I don't know if do we have the video queued up? If we have the video queued up, well, that's fine. Let's do it.
You call them and say this is not in the right format. Not you're out, you're done, your contracts are over. And so this has my attention. I'm extremely frustrated by it, but we are in the middle of a battle with the agencies now. And I can tell you this, Walz agrees with me that this piddly, stupid stuff running small people out of business is terrible.
Yeah, because what you thought was terrible there was that these people were being investigated for fraud. And you later took $10,000 in campaign donations from these same individuals. Do you remember that?
I would disagree with that characterization entirely, sir.
I'm sure you would.
No,
because it's surely uncomfortable for you. But you took $10,000 from those same people that were ostensibly supposed to be investigated. Yeah.
No, that's actually inaccurate.
No, it's not inaccurate. Well,
it is. First of all,
you're entitled to say it's inaccurate, but the facts are the facts. And my time's expired, Mr. Chairman, but I do have some UC requests.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Minnesota AG, who took $10,000 from convicted scammers, dismisses fraud scandal as political theater.
Without objection.
Amy Bach alleges Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison knew of Minnesota fraud.
Without objection.
Walz and Omar using ICE operations to distract from fraud scandal.
Without objection.
Tim Walz accused of stonewalling key probe as Somali fraud sweeps his state.
Without objection.
Conservatives blast Dems, Walz for likening ICE agents to Nazi police force.
Without objection.
Tim Walz urges Minnesotans to resist federal occupation.
Without objection.
Tim Walz was a COVID-19 tyrant.
Without objection.
Anti-ICE agitators set up blockade on Minneapolis Street to check drivers' license plates.
Without objection.
Minnesota Attorney General's legal opinion could threaten some county agreements with ICE.
Without objection to order.
ICE restricted from Minneapolis-owned parking areas under Mayor Fry orders. Minnesota mom jailed over COVID accuses Walz of tyranny. Minnesota grandma jailed for defying Walz COVID lockdown order warns you do not want tyranny at this level. And mother ponders. And that's all I do.
Without objection to order. Chair now recognizes Ms. Presley from Massachusetts.
I've been in Congress now for almost 8 years, and one of the most meaningful moments that I experienced here was in the Committee on Oversight and Reform under the great Chairman Elijah Cummings. It was the first hearing to take place that I introduced in the House of Representatives on the epidemic that is childhood trauma. Though I represent the Massachusetts 7th, one through line has remained true in my travels and conversations from Massachusetts to Minnesota to Illinois to Texas. And it is the devastating impacts of Trump's terror campaign on our nation's children. This administration's policies, including but certainly not limited to Operation Metro Surge, in my opinion, I would characterize as child abuse, child neglect, and inflicting childhood trauma. We are experiencing in real time the compounded adultifying of our children, where increasingly so a childhood is a privilege instead of a right. I'm reminded of a conversation I had recently at the airport where a dad approached me to talk about his 6-year-old son who returned home from school pleading and begging for his parents to give safe haven to his classmate, his best friend, for fear that if they did not do that, that he would be deported. No child should have those concerns or carry that heavy burden, but this is the reality for our nation's children under Donald Trump's America. Frederick Douglass said it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. We are certainly not building strong children. In my district, the Massachusetts 7th, Eleni was only 2 weeks old when her father was wrongfully taken by ICE, a trauma that she will carry for the rest of her life. Again, so far I'm speaking about the pleas of a 6-year-old and the policy, the family separation of a 2-week-old. In Minnesota, Liam Ramos was only at the age of 5 years old, was detained by ICE and sent to Texas, and he'll carry that trauma for the rest of his life. there are the children that are directly impacted. Then there is that secondary trauma for those who have bore witness. While in Minnesota, I met with parents who have had to establish parental patrols armed with whistles and orange vests and their cameras to try to keep their children safe. Green Street Elementary, it was just across the street from one of the murders that occurred in broad daylight under Operation Metro Surge. Around the country, the children of Renee Good, Keith Porter, Geraldo Campos, and dozens of other children whose parents were killed by ICE agents will carry that trauma the rest of their lives. Trauma in their bodies, their classrooms, their sleep. It shows up in the ways they cling to their parents at school drop-off, in the silence of a child who used to speak freely, in nightmares that no child should be visited by. Governor Walz, is a former educator and coach. You work closely with young people experiencing traumatic events. What effect does this have on them, their classmates, and community? And have you heard from mental health professionals or pediatric providers about how this is showing up in your state?
No. Well, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. First of all, I would say when I talk about Minnesota being one of the best states, if we're not first, it's usually because Massachusetts is. And I note that it is true because you care about this. And you mentioned it correctly. This is generational trauma that's been inflicted, whether it's learning loss that's happened or the trauma we've seen amongst our children. I say that as an educator, as governor, the deep concern, but as a parent of seeing this, what's happened to our children. We know that mental health issues will start to show up. We know that we'll see educational loss, and those have generational impacts on our economy and everything else. But I will note, your colleague mentioned me being a tyrant during COVID. We had some of the lowest deaths due to COVID. Tyrant looks like children being drugged from their parents, old people being drugged out of their house without warrants, 2 dead on the streets. And your point, the world saw a piece of it on TV. I can tell you none of us are going to be the same, Congresswoman. We are going to deal with this, and we are going to put money into social service programs to address it while we tighten up fraud protections, because the idea is you have all these generous programs, yes, and our people are healthier. Our people are more educated. Our economy's stronger. So thank you.